Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be taking a journey into a really celebrated work, one that shaped how millions understand a key figure,
That's right. We're talking about Ar-Raheeq Al-Makhtum,
or the sealed nectar in English. It's a biography of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
a hugely influential one.
And our mission really is to pull out the most important sort of nuggets of knowledge from this book. It's acclaimed worldwide, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. What's fascinating is its prestige. I mean, it actually won first prize in this massive
But
competition.
really,
Yeah, back in 1979, organized by the Muslim World League. And ever since then, well, it's become one of the most widely read, most respected Seerah books out there.
Seerah meaning biography of the Prophet.
Exactly. So this deep dive, it's really about figuring out why. Why does this book hold such significance for so many people?
Okay, let's unpack that then. Who was the mind behind it? The author who achieved this level of recognition?
Right. So the author is Safi-ur-Rahman al-Mubarakpuri. He was a prominent Islamic scholar from India, known for, well, a couple of key things. His deep grasp of Islamic history, obviously, but also his writing style. It's very clear, very engaging.
Which is crucial for a biography, I imagine.
Definitely. And context matters, too. He studied within the Salafi tradition.
Can you elaborate on that a bit? The Salafi tradition?
Sure, it's a school of thought that generally emphasizes returning to what they see as the earliest Islamic practices and interpretations. So that gives a certain lens.
How so? How does knowing that help us read the book?
Well, it helps us understand the perspective. Maybe anticipating a focus on certain types of sources like highly authenticated narrations or direct textual evidence. It frames how the history is presented.
Right, the emphasis.
Exactly.
Right.
He also worked with major institutions like the Islamic University of Medina and the Islamic Research Academy in Riyadh. Adds to the scholarly weight.
Okay, that makes sense. So a specific scholarly background, clear style. Now, the book itself, covering such a huge life, it must have a structure, right? How does the sealed nectar organize things?
It's actually very methodical. It
Yeah.
follows a chronological narrative style, step by step.
Okay.
And it's divided into these distinct parts that flow pretty seamlessly. It really takes you through the Prophet's life and the beginnings of Islam.
So where does it start?
It starts before the Prophet,
Hmm.
in the pre-Islamic era. It sets the stage, describes the Arabian Peninsula, the geography, the tribes, the different religions floating around, the social conditions, kind of paints a picture of the world he was born into.
Right, essential context. You need to know the world to understand the change.
Absolutely.
Right.
Then it moves into his birth and early life, covers his lineage, which is important, his childhood, upbringing, and his developing character. It subtly points out signs people later saw as indicating his future prophethood.
Interesting. And then,
Then we get to the core, the prophethood and the Meccan period. This details the first revelation, who the early converts were, and crucially, the intense persecution they faced.
from the Quraysh, right, the main tribe in Mecca.
Yes, exactly. Big opposition there. This part also covers key events like the migration to Abyssinia seeking refuge, the tough years of the boycott, and the period known as the Year of Sorrow.
Sounds like a really difficult beginning for the community. Was there a major turning point after all that hardship?
Definitely, that would be the Hijrah, the migration to Medina. This is treated as a really pivotal section in the book
Yeah, it's so pivotal.
because it details how the Prophet and his followers migrated from Mecca and, critically, established the first Islamic state in Medina. It covers things like the Constitution of Medina.
Ah, the framework for the new society.
Precisely, setting rules for this new, diverse community. After that, the book moves into the period of major battles and struggles.
Like Badir and Uhud.
Exactly. But Dear Uhud, Conduct the Trench. It explains the strategies, the outcomes, but also, importantly, the spiritual and moral lessons drawn from these conflicts. Even in struggle, there were lessons.
And how does the narrative arc conclude? Does it lead to success, consolidation?
It does. It builds towards the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, which was a key political moment, and then the eventual victory of Makkah.
And the book highlights his approach during that victory.
Very much so. It emphasizes the Prophet's mercy and magnanimity, even in that moment of absolute triumph. Then, the final section covers the farewell pilgrimage and the death of the Prophet.
Culmination.
Right. His last sermon, summing up his message, his legacy, and then his casting. It brings the whole narrative to a close.
Wow, okay. So that structure is incredibly clear. Now let's get to the why. Why this book? What are the strengths that have made the sealed nectar such a cornerstone? What makes it shine?
Well, there are several key things. Number one probably is its focus on authenticity and sources.
Okay.
It relies really heavily on authentic hadith. Those are the recorded sayings and actions of the Prophet, and it draws from the giants of early Islamic history, people like Ibn Hisham and At-Tabari. Foundational stuff.
So it's well grounded in the tradition.
Very. You feel like you're getting a narrative built on solid, well-documented accounts. That's a huge plus for many readers.
You mentioned clarity earlier, too. Is it easy to read?
Yes, and that's the second big strength. Clarity and simplicity, especially the English translation, it's just very clear, very reader-friendly.
So it's not bogged down in academic jargon.
Not at all. It makes it approachable. Whether you're new to the topic or you've read other seerahs, it just flows well. It bridges that gap, between scholarly work and something anyone can pick up and understand.
That accessibility must be key to its popularity. What about the tone? Biographies of revered figures can sometimes, stray into just praise.
That's a fair point. But the sealed nectar generally maintains a balanced tone. That's another strength. It presents the Prophet's life with reverence, yes, but also with a commitment to historical accuracy. It avoids excessive emotional language.
So respectful but grounded.
Exactly. And it does something else really well. It focuses on the spiritual and moral lessons.
So it's not just what happened, but what it means.
Precisely. The author frequently pauses the story, essentially, to highlight the ethical point, or the legal principle, or the spiritual insight you can take from a particular event.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Like when discussing the early persecution in Mecca, the book doesn't just recount the hardships. It emphasizes the lessons in patience, resilience, trusting in God's plan themes that resonate way beyond that specific historical moment.
That adds a whole other layer of value, makes it relevant today.
It really does.
Yeah.
And finally, there's its scope. It manages to be comprehensive yet concise.
How does it manage that? The Prophet's life is vast.
It strikes a good balance. It covers all the essential events of the Seerah. You don't feel like major things are missing.
Yeah.
But it doesn't get bogged down in excessive minor details either.
So it's not overly dense.
Right. It's a moderate length. Think of it as like the essential narrative. You get the full story without needing a multi-volume encyclopedia. It's a perfect entry point for many.
Okay, those are some significant strengths. Authenticity, clarity, balance, lessons, and that concise comprehensiveness. Now, for a balanced view, are there areas where maybe modern readers or academics might look for something different? Any limitations?
Yeah, that's important for any deep dive. No single book can be everything to everyone. One point sometimes raised is a relative lack of analytical depth. Meaning it's more descriptive than deeply analytical or comparative in a modern academic sense. Someone looking for, say, extensive socioeconomic analysis or detailed comparisons with other historical accounts might find it a bit light in those specific areas.
So strong on narrative, less on deep critical analysis.
Kind of. It explains the tribal and political structures of the time, yes, but maybe offers less insight into the broader socioeconomic impacts compared to some contemporary historical studies. The focus stays quite tightly on the Prophet's life and mission.
Okay, that makes sense. And you mentioned the author's Salafi background earlier. How might that aspect be viewed as a limitation by some, or just something to be aware of?
Well, some readers might note the Salafi leanings. It's not presented aggressively or divisively at all, but that background does subtly shape the narrative.
How so? Through emphasis?
Yeah, mostly through the emphasis on certain narrations, the prioritization of sources deemed most authentic within that specific scholarly tradition. It can subtly guide the interpretation of events. It's just a lens, like any author has, but one to be aware of depending on what you're looking for.
So it offers a particular well-regarded perspective, but maybe not the only perspective someone might want to explore.
Exactly. It's about understanding the framework. These aren't necessarily criticisms that diminish the book's value for its main audience, but points of reflection for perhaps academic readers or those seeking diverse interpretations.
Right. Good context. So putting it all together, the strengths, the structure, these points of reflection, who is this book really for? Who stands to gain the most from diving into the sealed nectar?
It actually has a really broad appeal. First and foremost, naturally, it's for Muslims. Anyone wanting an authentic, engaging, and highly respected account of the Prophet's life. For many, it's a foundational text.
The go-to Seerah.
For a large number, yes.
Yeah.
But it's also incredibly valuable for non-Muslims. If you're curious about Islamic history or want to understand Prophet Muhammad from a source respected within the tradition, this is a great place to start. It's narrative, it's clear.
Accessible.
Exactly. It provides that bridge for understanding.
Oh, else? Students?
Definitely. Students of Islamic studies, particularly those new to the Seerah, it gives you that solid, reliable foundation before maybe tackling more complex, specialized academic works.
A starting point.
A very good one. And also, for dawah workers and preachers, people involved in outreach or education, it's a fantastic resource.
Mhm.
It helps them ground their narrative of the Prophet's mission in an accurate, clear, and widely accepted account.
Okay, so a really wide range of people. Muslims seeking foundational knowledge, curious non-Muslims, students, educators.
Pretty much sums it up. Its utility is broad.
So to wrap things up then, it feels like the sealed nectar really holds its place as a cornerstone for good reason. It's detailed, but not overwhelming. It's authentic, but readable. It offers spiritual depth without being purely devotional.
That captures it well. It hits a sweet spot for many readers. Whether you're starting out exploring Islamic history or revisiting the Prophet's life, it offers both knowledge and, I think, genuine inspiration.
A powerful combination.
And maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to ponder. When we explore a historical biography like this, one that's so deeply revered, even acknowledging its specific viewpoint, what can we learn beyond the history itself?
What do you mean?
I mean, think about the enduring human themes, the search for guidance, for community, for purpose. How does reading a detailed account of leadership through immense trials, of building a community from scratch, of unwavering conviction, what might that narrative teach you about resilience or faith or leadership in your own life, regardless of your own background or beliefs?